I mean, that strategic plan, for lack of a better phrase, is your roadmap to success. And so if once you decide on that strategic plan, that this is where we're headed, this is how we're going to get there, the only way to make that super valuable is to revisit it all the time with all the decisions that you make in your organization. So specifically, I'll give you an example of how that changed the way we operated Impression 5. One of the things that we had done for a number of years was special events for outside firms. So they could come in and rent the Science Center and use the Science Center as their own after hours. And lots of people do this, and they tend to make some money on it, and it's kind of a neat, fun place to have a party. What we found to be true is that the added stress of that event planning, the additional hours and burden on the staff, had a burn rate that was way too significant. And so the more and more times we said yes, quite often we were doing it for less than it cost us. And then so you're not bringing enough revenue, you're burning your team out, and then they don't have the same passion and energy for what your core responsibilities are, which of course in our case was science education for children. And so once we started to make decisions like that and started to say, no, we're not going to do that anymore, and the reason we're going to do that is because we're focusing on this, I think not only did we gain a lot of clarity, but we had less mission creep and less energy draw.
Do you find now that you have your leadership team who has a good understanding of the strategic vision and mission creep, that now this is not leadership just at your level, but it's leadership at all levels? Absolutely.
I think now, specifically for Impression 5, I don't remember a time where we've ever been this clear in where we're headed and what we're doing. And that's a really fantastic feeling to have.
What kind of a message does that send to your key staff, to all of your employees, when you have that clarity, not only clarity of mission, but the clarity of decision making?
Well, I think it helps everybody understand what their role is in the success of the organization. So whether you might be the director of communications or you might be the guest experience coordinator, you know that you're all working in the same direction, even if you're on different role or have a different role within that process. And I don't think that there's anything more valuable than that. I think quite often the leadership of an organization or a company might have that, and I think what we fail in over and over and over again is communicating that vision throughout the whole team.
Talk for a minute about how the responsibility leadership has in communicating the very things you're talking about.
I think it's got to be top 3 in the things that you do as a leader. And I say that knowing that I have a great deal of work in order to become a better communicator. It's very, very important to be able to have your team, the team in which you participate in, understand where we're headed. And all of the members of that team may not agree on every facet of the plan or what's inside of it, but if they're able to communicate back and forth and understand why the decision was made that way, it becomes, I think, a very valuable team environment.
What you're describing, if I'm understanding you correctly, is you're describing one of the leader's responsibilities is to facilitate communication internally and externally within their environment.
Absolutely.
So when you look at external, you talked a little bit about internal communication, how you communicate to your staff. Mm-hmm. Share with me some of your thoughts on how leaders need to communicate externally, outside of their organization, to build the enthusiasm and the understanding of what your mission is.
Yeah, that's equally as important, specifically in our model, because the product that we're putting on the table is an experience inside the building, and the only time that we can be successful is if we bring people through the doors. And so the external communication strategy is really, really important. In the past, I think our communication has been not strategic in approach, and so it was quite often fractured or reactive and not proactive. And I think what we've seen over the last few years here, specifically since Katie Wittenauer has been on staff, is a much more strategic and focused communications plan. And that's everything from social media policies to what your press releases look like to what your corporate branding looks like. And fortunately or unfortunately, all of those things require a great deal of work and quite often can have a long timeline until you think you have this nicely packaged communication strategy. But it is as important as any other major business function for us to be able to communicate really effectively to the outside, to the public or external.